So my first question would be, if there is a right way and a wrong way to program, why isn't there just one program that's 10 out of 10 and everybody does that one program that one way?
It's a great question. I think mainly because there are so many different ways to skin the cat, and there's so much gray area with programming. So for instance, you might have someone that wants to get in their best shape for Memorial Day weekend. They've got 12 weeks to get in their best shape body composition wise, but maybe they have other things going on in their life, and long-term, the approach to get them in their best shape might not be the approach they use forever. So there are obviously a lot of different ways that they can go as far as sustainability. But if I have a client come to me and they say, I want to get in my best possible shape in 12 weeks, here is what I'm dealing with, here is my life outside of the gym, here are my vital metrics, what do we do to reverse engineer to get them there? The approach that I use with them for 12 weeks might be a different approach than I use for the rest of the year. Short answer is there's a lot of gray area, and to just have one thing that represents everything would be nearly impossible to do.
Let's say that somebody comes to you, their only goal is aesthetics. They don't care about lifting certain numbers or any performance metrics. Why is lifting heavier or trying to push some of the weight still important, if at all?
Well, we know that from supported research, mechanical tension is the most important factor with muscular hypertrophy. So there is going to be some element of lifting heavier loads with bigger patterns and staying in heavier rep ranges, anywhere from the 3 to 8 rep range with a pattern like a squat. Now, the question becomes, we know that to be true, but the question is, what is the right movement for the right person? So if we're trying to adhere to getting more mechanical tension, but we're using patterns that are not in alignment with the individual, like the deadlift is a good example. But let's say that we were trying to use a movement that was a bad fit for the person in the sense that it flares them up, it brings out some issues that could be there underneath the surface. Then we have to ask whether or not if what we're doing, the goal of what we're trying to do is, I guess, outweighed by how it impacts their life outside of the gym. So yes, we can follow all the research, we can tap into mechanical tension, we can use other elements of hypertrophy like muscle damage and metabolic stress. The research doesn't support those as well as it does mechanical tension, but we do know that there are certainly many tools and many methods we can use to get them there. It's about finding what is in alignment with that person and allows them to move forward. And of course, we have the nutrition component too, which is not what I'm talking about in any of these videos, but that needs to be on point as well. Otherwise, we're gonna potentially go backwards.
Somebody comes to you, they may be 15, 20, 25 pounds overweight. They want to be more defined, but they also want to be bigger, have more muscle.
Yep.
Do we do it all at once? Do we focus on one thing first? And what's the order of operations there?
It's incremental. I'm not a transformation guy. I am a slow and steady wins the race, incremental. And I'm not about a 90-day transformation. I'm about what you can do for the rest of your life. So if you think about sustainability, what is the best level of you can sustain 365 days a year, as opposed to we get you to the best level of shape in 12 weeks and then we potentially lose some of that over the next 12 weeks and so on. So I think that the best solution for someone is something that they can do for longer bouts of time and have it be reasonable too, because people don't want to eat boiled chicken and brown rice and broccoli 7 days a week. There has to be some things in there that allow people to stay motivated with what they're doing, because that, in essence, is going to be the best thing for them long term.
So with that in mind, obviously keeping somebody mentally engaged is really important. You have to, at some level, enjoy how you're training to stick with it.
Correct.
Some people's tolerance is higher than others, and so some people need more variation more frequently. What is kind of the minimum as far as how long you should do something before you can change it up and still see results?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we've battled with this one quite a bit because we have a lot of people that are coming from CrossFit, former athletes that are used to just like constant variance. They're doing different warm-ups every day. They don't even repeat the same warm-up twice, which is, again, crazy when you think about it. But the sweet spot for me is 3 to 4 weeks of the same variations. If you think about like this, let's talk about 4 weeks. Week 1, you start a new program. You're learning. You're not pushing, you're learning. You're learning, okay, this is the exercise, this is how I do it. And let's say you know how to do those exercises, you're still learning because it's a new program, it's a new coach, maybe new parameters. So week 1 is kind of just getting used to things. Week 2, you're like, okay, I did this last week, I can push a little bit more. Week 3, now you're pushing. You're like, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm in the groove, I'm ready to go. I know what I'm doing this week, I know what I'm shooting for. Awesome. And then week 4 is essentially the highest level of that. And usually when you see a program that is done incrementally over the course of 4 weeks, or even a lot of my training subscriptions are 3 weeks, for a very specific reason, because I am dealing with people that are used to constant change, you will see the intensity will go up, but the volume will go down. And that's kind of just a basic tenet of programming. Like, hey, if we're gonna ask you to go to a 1 rep max, then we need to make some concessions elsewhere. So think about it as you're learning week to week. And even with conditioning, I have people do the same conditioning because week 1 to week 2 to week 3, they get better just by virtue of doing the same thing. They learn how to control their use of energy. They learn how to be better as far as their quality of movement. So they get more from it week to week, and they're like, oh my God, I did, my rounds were, instead of last week, they were 2 minutes per round, I was doing 90 seconds per round this week. It's like, yes, because you're more accustomed to doing something you just have done. You're doing it again, you're better at doing it. That in and of itself is progression.
Who's the ideal client for Jason Brown coaching?
Former athletes are the ideal client. People that know how to push themselves, people that know how to train. I don't work with beginners. I work with people that know how to squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, have probably done CrossFit because they're competitive. And they get to a stage where they realize that being competitive is great, but if it impacts their quality of life outside the gym, it's like, no go. So they need to find that balance. And again, it's kind of like the 365 approach where what can we do year round? Stay motivated, still make gains, but use the minimum effective dose and use more quality over quantity. Those are the types of people. So the former athlete, type A people, those are the people that do really well with what I do.
And you're training both men and women?
Yes.
Are there any major training considerations between men and women? I mean, obviously, maybe like if someone's doing a standardized program, the program is not necessarily going to be different, but is there a way that men or women should approach the programs differently?
I mean, there are various schools of thought on that, and I think that on a one-on-one basis, I'm working with someone one-on-one, there's definitely things that we can lean on, but as a whole, like if you're using a training subscription, I have one program that's geared specifically to women for building their backside, building a posterior chain from basically top to bottom, and there are strategies that we use with that, and generally speaking, women tend to respond to higher volume a little bit better, but on a program that's delivered, our programs are true training subscriptions that are delivered to the masses. The former athlete does really, really well with it, and both male and female. We have mostly men, but I would like to have more females because I think actually females tend to overthink less. The guys tend to overthink a lot of the nuances. The ladies are just like, get it done, don't make excuses. So I really, really like training women, and I train a lot more women one-on-one than I do men, which again, so the short answer is yes, there are differences. Can you address that on a program delivered to thousands of people? Probably not. It's a little bit harder to do. You can't be specific with volume, but I think as a whole, everyone needs to be concerned with quality over quantity. What's their minimum effective dose? What can they do that will allow them to still recover? And what supports their quality of life outside the gym?
So you mentioned something about a posterior development program. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's been in the gym for more than 10 years has seen a pretty large shift in how people in general are spending their time in the gym, but particularly women. A lot of women coming off of the cardio machines and spending almost as much time just doing glute training, a lot of hip thrusts. Back in the day, it was like you can't have too strong of a posterior chain, but is there kind of a cutoff maybe where people are just focusing too much on training one element, in this case glutes, and do you think that maybe that could be utilized to develop some other assets, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that too much of anything is a bad thing, and I think that you can certainly train the glutes in a number of ways, and there are people that make their living off of that. But I do think there are other areas of low-hanging fruit that we also need to consider. It's not just about any one thing, it's about a mix of things. And a mix of things is gonna give you more longevity. Think about like, you have performance, you have longevity, you have aesthetics. There are a lot of things happening there. And we could kind of lean on any one of those, but kind of landing in the middle where we get a little bit of everything is, in my opinion, better for long term. So if you want to bias glutes, You want to build your glutes. Maybe your glutes are a limiting factor. You want to spend the next 12 weeks and you do an overabundance of glute exercises. You do hip extension, you do abduction, and a lot of different variations, a lot of different rep schemes. Yes, you could certainly do that and get phenomenal gains from it. But the question is should you do that forever? Probably not. I think something that's more sustainable, more balanced will be a better fit long-term.
Kind of staying on that similar theme, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the gym was divided into kind of like two sections. It was like people doing cardio for weight loss and then like bodybuilding type training. CrossFit came in, really revolutionized that, exposed people to much more athletic movements. Even if you don't agree with the organization of exercises, you can't argue with the fact that CrossFit got people off of the leg extension machine and got people squatting, which is probably a lot better. What do you think is the maybe big issue in fitness right now, and what would you like to see change about the fitness industry and maybe common trends right now?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, as I just said, we need a balance of a lot of things, and I don't think we should lean too heavy on any one area. So for instance, we know that cardio as a whole used to be used for fat loss. Now we realize that cardio is used for heart health. So we need heart health because that supports everything. Your heart supports your ability to recover. It supports things like cardiac output, your ability to deliver nutrients and oxygen to working tissues. So we know that to be true. So we need some form of cardio. And I'm not talking about just walking. Walking might be a good fit for some people, might not be a good fit for others. They might not be able to get their heart into the right range, but we do need some low intensity. I would say we're living in a world where we're chronically stressed out and we have programs that just are high. So we're giving people, it's very counterintuitive, we're giving people the opposite of what they actually need. So we think about what people need. They need heart health, they need cardio, they need to reduce stress levels, they need strength training. In particular, where do we need strength training? Posterior chain, because people are what? Sitting on their iPhones, on social media, in an internally rotated position on a consistent basis. So we need to pull people out of that, get more strength to the upper back and glute complex. And how much do we need of that? 2 to 3 sessions of both. That's, if we think about someone who's got 4 days a week to train, you do 2 cardio, 2 strength, full body strength. If you got 5 days a week to train, maybe you do 3 full body strength and 2 cardio, or some variant of that. But I think when we lean toward any one end and we say, like, I hear people all the time say, like, I hate cardio, I don't do it. Okay, well, there's an impact, because if you do the cardio, you're gonna improve your ability to recover in the session and outside of the session. So I think as a whole, like, if you just think about fitness as a whole, you need a well-designed program that has both things and does it in a way where the things don't interfere and interact too much with each other, in a negative way at least.
All right, last question. Training on sore muscles. Good idea, bad idea? Depends on how sore you are. What do you think?
So first thing is why are you so sore? And I think that soreness is another thing we know to have a negative impact on strength and hypertrophy gains. So you shouldn't be overly sore in the first place. Now, you do a new program, you will be overly sore. So going through the motions, another reason to have cardio, aerobic training in your program, because you can use that to help kind of, get some lymphatic drainage and facilitate the recovery process. So I think a lot of times when you have people that are lifting, and they don't do any cardio, they go into the session and they're already sore and they're not in the prime position to really push. So number one, can you train? Yes, but how are you gonna train? So if you lift on day 1 and you do cardio on day 2, then you lift on day 3, you do cardio on day 4, and then you lift on day 5, you've got a nice bridge between the week. So it helps reduce soreness. Now, over time, if you're overly sore all the time, you need to start looking for a better program. You shouldn't be overly sore all the time, because soreness will take away from the gains you make. Soreness, we used to think muscle damage, micro tears. No, it's not that. It is being in a state where you can put in maximal intent, and being overly sore takes away from that. So soreness is not the marker of good training. It's not the marker of you making gains. It actually has negative effects and can impact you the way you don't want it to. So that's what I would say for that. I think a lot of people are doing programs that make them sweat and make them sore, and they think it's good. Guess again.
Cool. All right, I think that's good for today.
Awesome.
Best program available on the internet today.
I think it's very difficult to find a trainer like Jason that...
Since joining Everyday Heroes, I feel like I've stopped working out and actually started training.